In today's episode, we are talking about the CP504, which is the Notice of Intent to Levy. All right. We're going to talk about what that is and what you need to do to protect yourself from being levied from the IRS. And I also want to let you know, even if you have already been levied, there are steps that you can take to protect yourself from being levied again. And if that levy has put you in an undue financial hardship, there is a way that we can protect you and potentially get part of that levy released so that we can work on an arrangement with the IRS that will satisfy them and not bankrupt you.
Welcome to the Tax Relief with Timalyn Bowens podcast. Are you behind on taxes? Is the IRS threatening you or your business? Are you overwhelmed and confused about how to resolve your tax issues? Let's join Timalyn as she explains your options and how she may be able to help. Timalyn Bowens is America's favorite EA.
Hey, family. Welcome to episode 87 of the Tax Relief with Timalyn Bowens podcast. It is June, and I always tell people this is my real busy season. And the reason for that is because now is when the IRS is sending so many notices to taxpayers to let them know, hey, this is your demand for payment because you owe. They're reminding people of previous balances they had. If you were to receive a refund this year, but you had a previous balance, they're letting you know, hey, you had a refund, but we're going to actually be applying it to your balance. All kinds of IRS mail is going out there. And this is when I get really busy because I'm here as an advocate for you to represent taxpayers like yourself before the IRS to negotiate some type of payment arrangement that allows you to pay over time and to see what penalties and interest we can get reduced, right? So, with that being said, I want to focus today on a specific notice that is the CP504. Okay. So in today's episode, we are talking about the CP504, which is the Notice of Intent to Levy. All right. We're going to talk about what that is and what you need to do to protect yourself from being levied from the IRS. And I also want to let you know, even if you have already been levied, there are steps that you can take to protect yourself from being levied again. And if that levy has put you in an undue financial hardship, there is a way that we can protect you and potentially get part of that levy released so that we can work on an arrangement with the IRS that will satisfy them and not bankrupt you. Okay? So let's get right into today's episode. I've been asked, can the IRS really levy me? And the answer is yes. In the Internal Revenue Code, which is what gives the IRS, the Treasury Department, and the Internal Revenue Service the authority to do what they do, in Code Section 6331D, that is where they have the authority to levy you, and they talk about the due process that you receive before they actually do a levy. So if you're new to the podcast, back in episode, I believe 3, I talked about what a levy is. This is when, look, it's gotten real. Okay. The IRS is done playing around with you. And while this isn't your final notice, you are well on your way to getting either your bank account cleared. They can also garnish your wages. If you're a business, they can levy through the payment processor. They can take up to 15% of your Social Security or other government payments. And they can also seize your property or your right to property, such as like your state income tax refund, right? And if they seize that property, they're looking to sell it to satisfy the tax debt. So to protect yourself from that, you need to make sure any IRS mail that you're receiving, you are opening it as soon as possible. Make sure that you're reading it carefully because it will break down how much you owe, and it'll also show you the different penalties and interest that you're paying as well. Sitting and doing nothing allows the bill to grow overnight because those penalties and interest will accrue very quickly. Okay. Now, if you have the ability to pay in full, you need to go ahead and do that because if you're worried about penalties and interest and maybe we can do penalty abatement, you have up to 2 years to claim a refund for any penalties that you had that you paid. All right. Whereas if you're receiving the CP504, you don't have 2 years to pay before they levy you. All right. Now, if you can't pay immediately, if you aren't eligible for any penalty abatement, if you can't do the offer and compromise where you pay the lump sum, which to be truthful with you, the majority of people do not, you can set up a payment plan. Now, I will tell you, the IRS calls these installment agreements, and they are a privilege, not a right. If you have not been a compliant taxpayer, which means you filed on time and you've kept up with your withholding, what you do with your W-4, that's been done correctly, and or made estimated tax payments. Those are the things that work in your favor as far as being allowed to set up an installment agreement. It is a privilege, not a right. So you'll want to make sure that you understand what your different options for installment agreements are. I talk about installment agreements in episode 10 of this podcast. If you can't pay the tax in full within 72 months, you may need to look at different options like a partial pay installment agreement. If you wouldn't be able to pay your rent or your mortgage or for groceries, if you had to pay your back taxes, you may qualify for something like a currently not collectible status, which I talk about in episode 23, temporarily delaying IRS enforcement. These are all options that you have, but you need to make sure that you are prepared to propose one of these options when you call the IRS about the levy. Okay. If you don't agree with what is showing on this intent to levy, not saying you don't think people should pay taxes. If you think that the amounts are incorrect, then you need to contact the IRS via the toll-free number that's going to be on the notice. Now, before you do that, I suggest that you take a look at your tax account. You can do this by going to irs.gov. They use the ID.me system. You can pull your account transcripts to see, okay, does the amount that they're showing on here that I owe, what matches my tax return? Okay, those amounts match. Why are all these penalties here? You want to have all that worked out before you get on the phone so that you're only highlighting the things that you truly have questions about. You also want to take a look at your different payment options and how to make a payment arrangement, which again, the IRS calls these installment agreements. If you are interested in learning more about those, you can check out episode 10 where I go over installment agreements. And again, episode 23 is where I talk about currently not collectible status, temporarily delaying IRS enforcement. But if you do really think that you may be a candidate for the offer and compromise, by all means, there's an episode. Actually, there are three where I talk about the offer and compromise, how to qualify, and then I also talk about a different type of offer and compromise, the doubt as to liability. All right. So if you're listening to this on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, and you're looking at the podcast, you can type in any of those topics and the episode should pop right up. Okay. So you want to have information about what your options are, and you may also want to request an appeal. Now, There is the Collection Appeals Program. So that's still the IRS, but it is an independent office within the IRS. And what this does, you can protect your right to take this to court if it should go that far later. But also, if you do not agree with what is on the CP504, the intent to levy, or you don't feel that the IRS actually followed due process in allowing you the option to try to take care of this before getting to the levy, you may also want to appeal for that reason. Okay. So again, as we're looking at this, the IRS is to let you know, hey, we intend to levy you. And again, that can be your state refund, that can be your bank account, that can be your Social Security up to 15%, it could be your pension, your wages. You don't know what exactly they're going to go for because, again, they can seize your tangible assets as well and sell those and attempt to satisfy the levy. So, you may also get hit with a federal tax lien. This is filed with the county clerk's office and it lets other creditors or potential creditors know, hey, we, the Internal Revenue Service, have dibs on any money they get from the sale of an asset. So that tax lien could potentially keep you from selling or purchasing a home. So that is something as well that you want to make sure that if at all possible, we can avoid. It's not the end of the world, but depending on what your goals and plans are, it really can kind of cramp you up, right? So I talk more about that. I believe that's either episode 2 or 3. I remember I talked about them back to back. Okay. Now, another thing that can happen with the levy, depending on how much you owe, you may also get another notice that's letting you know that they're going to revoke your passport because they're reaching out to the State Department and they're going to keep them from issuing you a passport or renewing a passport, whichever one is applicable for you because you have seriously delinquent tax debt. Again, you have to take care of this and you can't put your head in the sand. So if you don't have the ability to pay in full, we need to look at what your payment options are or your other options that will satisfy the IRS and not bankrupt you. If you don't contact the IRS to take care of this, it may not be tomorrow, it may not be the next week, but they will levy you. They will take state tax refunds. They will take any real estate commissions, any wages, bank accounts, business assets. They can take your personal assets like your car or your home and sell those items to satisfy the tax debt. And as I mentioned before, and people don't believe me, they can take your Social Security benefits, up to 15% of your Social Security benefits. You don't want the IRS to be in control of your cash flow. Okay? So, what should you do? I'll go over it again. If you have the ability, pay the amount as soon as you can, ASAP yesterday. If you can't pay in full, you want to make sure that you have looked at your account and verify that what the IRS says you owe is accurate. You may also want to consider an appeal, but you also want to explore your different payment options so that you have something to propose so that you can stop the levy from happening. Okay. Now, I know I gave you a lot of information. I hope it wasn't too much, but I did want to extend the invite. If you feel overwhelmed by everything that you've heard and you just don't want the IRS in your bank account, you'd prefer to have somebody handle this for you, you can book a call with me at www.bowenstaxsolutions.com. Now, I will tell you, This podcast is free. The different resources I mentioned, if you check out episode 10 about installment agreements, episodes 2 and 3 about the lien and levy, that's all free. But if we spend time together where I give you feedback and advice on your specific case, that is going to be a paid call. We could have a call where we meet on Zoom for an hour. I give you direction, the best direction to go, or we could have an IRS notice call. It's really up to you, right? But I still wanted to give you the information in this episode so that you would be equipped. So whether you work with me or somebody else, you know what you're up against when it comes to dealing with the IRS. Don't wait too long because you don't want to be that person living in fear of checking your bank account balance because you don't know if the IRS got you today. You know what I'm saying? If you found this helpful, I would love if you give me a thumbs up, subscribe on whatever platform you're checking this out on. But most importantly for me in this episode, I'm on a mission to fill the tax literacy gap one taxpayer at a time. Do something with the information that you've just received. Implement it. Go check out that tax account. Verify that the amounts of the IRS said are accurate, and make a call to the IRS if you're not going to hire somebody to represent you before the IRS, to make sure that you don't wake up to your income sources being gone. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you guys in the next episode. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to listen today. I'd like to thank Jim Ray Consulting Services for helping me get this message out to you. I hope you found the information helpful. Did you know 1 in 50 people have a tax problem? Please share this episode with your friends and family because you never know who may need help. Again, thanks for listening. Hey, just as a reminder, this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. It provides a framework and possible solutions for solving your tax problems, but it is not legally binding. Please consult your tax professional regarding your specific tax situation.